Okay, enough of the exercise routine. We're going to get down to business. We have some really important speakers tonight. They're ready to entertain and inspire you. And it's now my pleasure to welcome a fellow Coloradan who will give you a warm Colorado welcome, Maggie Fox. Maggie began her career as a teacher and a community organizer on the Navajo and Hopi reservations in Arizona and New Mexico. She also worked for the Colorado, North Carolina, and Northwest Outward Bound schools for over a decade. For 20 years, Maggie served as the Deputy Executive Director of the Sierra Club, where she oversaw the start of the Sierra Club's strategic shift to focus primarily on building environmental community, and led numerous federal, state, and regional policy efforts on climate change, energy policy, Western public lands and water, Native American natural resource issues, and agricultural reform. Maggie is currently the president and CEO for the Alliance for Climate Protection, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization founded in 2006 by Vice President and Nobel laureate Gore, who currently serves as the chairman of her board of directors. Please join me in welcoming Maggie Fox.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to everyone here. I do want to extend a warm Colorado welcome, so I wore my boots tonight. Let me say just a couple of things as way of introduction before I begin my remarks. First, I learned today that there are 17 colleges and universities in Colorado that are members of AASHE, and it's not complete. So I hope by the time that you meet next year for this new goal of an annual conference, every single college and university in the state of Colorado will be a member of AASHE, and I suspect that will be true. So that's my first challenge of the night. The second is to say that I'm very proud to have you here in my home state. While I run an organization right now that is national in scope, and AASHE is national in scope, and it is most effective, and we are most effective because we're working, in our case, across the country and across the globe. I'm very proud of this state and the innovation hub that Colorado has become on the clean energy format, and so it's very fitting, I think, for this conference to be here, and I'm glad that you're in my home state and that there are so many representatives from Colorado here tonight and through the rest of your conference. Let me also say thank you. I was remarking to Ed Begley, who I'm really excited to hear later tonight, that the world is in a fairly uncertain place right now, a bit off tilt and off kilter, and it's a particular honor and joy, to borrow Paul's phrase or word, to be amongst people who have stepped up to both the opportunity and extraordinary challenge of the climate crisis and do something about it, and do something in what I think are incredibly effective ways. So I want to thank you for your leadership, for your stewardship, and for your willingness to work not only in your own locale, but to knit yourselves together across the country to become a force for the future as well as a political reality of today. I think a couple of other things I'd like to do is say that I will actually issue a challenge at the end of my remarks for you, and I hope it will be one that you can complete, but we'll come to that a little bit later. The Alliance was started, as Paul said, by Vice President Gore at the end of 2006, and the essence of our mission is to educate people about the urgency and solvability of the climate crisis, to see the challenge and the opportunity in equal measure, and to not shy away from it, but instead step forward into the future and embrace this challenge while understanding that the threat is very real and growing every day. In the first year of the organization, under Al's leadership and that of Kathy Zoe, who's now Undersecretary of Energy at the Department of Energy on renewable energy and efficiency, so she's continuing on just the right career path. There was a large messaging campaign in 2007 and 2008 that was largely on television, designed to, in fact, expand the scope of what was happening on the ground around the country. And I joined in early 2009 to really expand the grassroots aspects of the organization. And to that end, we put nearly 250 organizers, climate organizers, in 25 states in 2009 and today. The purpose of which is to actually ground in key communities across the country, to reach out to faith-based leaders, to agricultural leaders, to community colleges and universities, to business leaders, small business leaders, large corporations, pulling together the community it takes to build the political will to move not just our colleges and universities into the 21st century, into the clean energy future that we know is possible, but the rest of our country pulling in that space. After the leadership of President Obama, it looked as if there was a big opportunity for us to move in a national way and not just in sectors and in smaller populations across the country. But last July, we reached an end to the possibility of a legislative opportunity in 2010. And so it's even more important than it was before you began this endeavor that you continue. Because at the end of the day, what I believe is the most fundamental element of our inability nationally to move as a country together in this endeavor is fear. Is also, in some ways, a lack of awareness and a touchstone to what a clean energy economy actually looks like in an individual's life. And there is polling of every sort and kind, good quality polling, not so great quality polling, that will show you that the American people are ready and have been ready for a number of years to embrace this opportunity. They're not as excited about the threat, but they are very excited about the opportunity. And what appears to be holding them back is a sort of a sense, not just a failure of urgency, which I think everyone in this room embraces, but also a lack of clarity of what it looks like. What does it look like to live a sustainable life? What is a sustainable business when they are bombarded on a regular basis with greenwashing? What is a carbon neutral world? How can we get there? What are the 5 key steps to take first? What can I do as an individual? What can I do in my business? What can I do in my college? And so the work that you're doing is actually taking carbon out of the atmosphere, which for someone like me is enough to make me joyous in and of itself. It's real reductions. But you're also modeling behavior that people don't yet have their hands on. And you are also training the student leaders of tomorrow. So I commend you as university officials, as businesses, as students, for what you are doing, not just for your campuses and for what you are doing for this country, but really you're proving that this dream is also a reality. And to that end, I guess I can't thank you enough for that. The other sort of points I'd really like to do is talk a little bit about what the Alliance is doing and how our work, I hope, is in partnership and supplements to yours. When I started, we empowered a campaign called the Repower Campaign, based on a speech that Vice President Gore gave in July of 2008. If you remember, during that time, there was a big drill, baby, drill political mantra. And there was no really effective counter-voice to that point of view. Vice President Gore went to the podium in Washington, D.C., and gave a very important and very powerful speech about how it was actually possible, not just in theory, but in reality, to repower America entirely with clean energy within a decade, laying out not just the vision, but the elements that make it possible. And so when I began, we decided that Repowering America would be the story of the future of this organization. We put organizers in a number of different places around the country, as I mentioned, and some of their activities include things, not just what I have already spoken of, but something that's particularly pertinent to your endeavors, which is what we call the Youth Surge program. We started in a set of key campuses in the 25 states that we've been in, and it has been remarkably successful. One of the themes of that youth surge organizing is that the students on these campuses are looking for the clean energy jobs of the future and writing up their resumes and designing the jobs that they actually want to have when they leave college or a master's or any other higher degree that they seek. And turning those job descriptions into letters to their elected leaders saying, help me create this job that I am educated and excited to do. We opened the program just about a month ago to all campuses in the country for the first time, and within 3 days, our numbers had more than doubled. And so I will be excited to know when you meet again next year how many Youth Surge programs there are on your campuses. There's another program that we have that I adore, even though my children have passed this age, which is what is called inconvenient youth. College campuses are largely populated by students 18 and above. But there are young people, as everyone here knows, 12, 13 and above, who are just as engaged and energized by this issue and by this possibility as those in college. And so we began Inconvenient Youth. And their communication tool is texting. That cluster of kids, they don't bother with a computer. They find it very quaint, in fact. I know my children did. But in fact, communicate by texting, and we have literally thousands of kids in our Inconvenient Youth program who are not only inconvenient, but remarkably frustrated by the pace of change that is happening in this country and around the world. And they're not going to put up with it for a lot longer, and they're on their way to your campuses in very short order. And they will be armed when they get there with expectations, with dreams, and with tools, because most of them are already organizing their middle schools and high schools. And when they get to college, organizing won't be the first time they've done this. They will be seasoned organizers, and their expectations, I hope, will be remarkably high, and we will be straining to catch up to them. The last program I'd like to mention is one that we are building today. I think everybody in this room, and perhaps Ed will speak about the climate crisis. The speed of change is happening more quickly than any scientist had predicted. It is both terrifying and energizing. But I think there's also another challenge that, and oddly enough, is equal to the climate challenge. And that is the communication challenge about this crisis. In this century we live in this crazy, complicated world of information flowing at us in a million different directions, information can be twisted and distorted with a remarkable speed and with remarkable lethalness. So an investment that we have made and will continue to make in a much bigger way going forward in the communication challenge is, I believe what you are doing is an investment not just in the 21st century, not just in a clean energy future, not just in stepping forward and recognizing the threats of the climate crisis instead of hiding from them. It's actually an investment in our democracy. It's an investment in personal action and collective action together, that we are not manipulated and moved to fear and to resistance to change, yet that, yes, is in part motivated by things that are changing in our world at an alarming rate, but also because there is much good to be done. If you can build a campus that is carbon neutral today, and there are campuses that are that way, then we can build cities and nations that are that way. We don't have to accept the suffering that has been occurring in Pakistan and in Russia over these last many months, and we don't have to accept the loss of such exquisite beauty in our natural world if we don't change our voracious habits. And so I would say to you, as you think about your actions, as you plan the metrics and the absolute clarity with which you are making changes in your campuses, that you also think just as aggressively about how to communicate this, how not to accept that doing good is sufficient, that we actually have to tell the story of what you are doing, and that you have to understand that that story may be attacked, and that your job is to stand up, not just to doing, but to talking and telling the story in ways that will just really thwart any attacks that may be placed upon it. We have more than one challenge, and there are people, in fact, I had a conversation this morning with some of my family about this communication challenge, and there was a touch of sadness, if you will, or fear that distortion had taken such a place in our society that we might not be able to pull it back. Well, I think you prove that that's not true. I think you are proving that grassroots individual actions pulled into collectivity tell a story that no one can distort, as long as you are aware that you have also the responsibility to tell that story. So I would close by issuing a challenge. I understand from reading your annual report in 2009, I think you were at 625 or 35 schools and university, and now you're at 800 or above. I think you can be, and perhaps should exceed, 1,500 colleges and universities by the time you meet next year. And instead of a third of the student population in this country, it's in excess of 50%. Because this work that you are doing is infectious, it is exciting, and it is our future. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Maggie, for those inspiring words, and also for the challenge that you've laid out for us. I thought my board was challenging. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate it.